The sinister plan of the impostor. Leo, a 13-year-old boy, was sent to stay with his Uncle Donnie in a remote, isolated town for a few weeks, while his mother resolved some personal matters. He never imagined this visit would turn into a nightmare. When Leo first arrived, Uncle Danny was a warm and friendly man, welcoming him with open arms. For the first few days, everything seemed normal. The house was old but cozy. However, as time passed, Leo began noticing strange things. Uncle Danny's behavior grew increasingly erratic. He would spend hours staring at the walls, mumbling to himself, and engaging in peculiar habits. One evening, Leo spotted his uncle in the yard with a net and a glass jar, seemingly catching something peculiar. Then, Uncle Danny brought it to the backyard balcony. What Leo saw next left him frozen in disbelief. Leo saw his uncle holding a larva. To his horror, Uncle Danny calmly placed it into his mouth, swallowing it without any sign of disgust. Leo tried to dismiss it, thinking it was just an eccentricity, but the strangeness grew. Uncle Danny's cooking became odd. Once delicious meals now looked disturbing, sometimes containing unrecognizable ingredients. One night, Leo started suspecting something far worse was happening. He called his mother, explaining what he had witnessed, but she didn't believe him at first. He needed evidence. Leo's unease grew as Uncle Danny became increasingly distant and frightening. At night, Leo began hearing strange noises coming from his uncle's room. Uncle Danny even avoided eye contact, something he never did before. His smiles became forced and unsettling. One afternoon, Leo snuck into the kitchen to take pictures and videos of his uncle, preparing another strange meal. The photo shocked him. From this angle, his uncle looked unrecognizable, his features distorted. Terrified, Leo sent the photo to his mother. Her initial skepticism turned into horror. She called him back. "Leo, you need to stay calm. Just wait there. I'll come get you," she reassured him, though Leo could hear the anxiety in her voice. As time passed, Leo began to feel an overwhelming pressure. He couldn't just wait. He had to do something before it was too late. He remembered his mother mentioning Uncle Danny's insomnia. Recalling the bottle of sleeping pills in the bathroom, Leo quietly took it and slipped it into his pocket as he tiptoed into the kitchen. Uncle Danny was there, his back turned to Leo as he prepared something with a foul, frightening smell. Leo quickly crushed the pills and mixed them into the food. That night, Uncle Danny ate the food without suspicion, but he quickly fell into a deep sleep. Leo sat in his room, waiting. The storm outside raged on, and the world beyond seemed to be closing in on him. His mother called again, telling him that a light snowstorm was sweeping through the area, but she would try to get there as soon as possible. Time was running out. Hours passed. Leo couldn't take it anymore. He had to ensure his mother would arrive. He went downstairs, and that's when he saw him again. Uncle Donnie approached Leo in a frightening manner, but Leo smiled, acting as though nothing was wrong. Leo told him his mother was coming to visit, and that she said she was very hungry. He asked if Uncle Danny could help him prepare a meal for her. Leo breathed a sigh of relief when his uncle froze for a moment before smiling and agreeing. It felt like a narrow escape. Leo needed to come up with more ways to stall for time until his mother arrived. The upcoming moments would be a living nightmare. After a while, Uncle Danny went to the back of the house, while the snow outside continued to fall heavily. The ticking of the old clock seemed louder in the silence. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. It was a man standing on the doorstep, his face pale and cold. He introduced himself as being from the town hospital, saying that Uncle Danny hadn't shown up for his volunteer shifts in days and hadn't been heard from. Leo didn't know how to respond, unsure if his suspicions were correct, so he simply said, "Uncle Danny was out." The man left, but Leo's unease continued to grow. Later, while Uncle Danny was away, Leo didn't know what to do, so he began exploring the house and discovered secrets in the basement. When he opened the basement door, the room was cluttered with old boxes and furniture. He found jars filled with strange, wriggling creatures, along with the rancid stench of rotting food. Among the mess, Leo found an old photo of two people, a woman and a man. The man looked strikingly like Uncle Danny, only older and slightly different. The snowstorm worsened. The lights flickered, and eventually, the house was plunged into darkness. Leo used the dim glow of his phone flashlight and slowly crept up the stairs. He wandered toward the living room aimlessly. Then suddenly, a creaking sound came from somewhere in the house. In the living room, through the faint light streaming in from outside, Leo saw a figure sitting on a chair, facing the wall. It was a familiar silhouette. The silence in the room was stifling. Without warning, Uncle Danny suddenly turned around, his wild, vacant eyes glaring at Leo. "You think I didn't know, Leo?" Leo froze, fear washing over him. His heart pounded as if it wanted to escape his chest. He swallowed hard, trying to stay calm, but his hands began trembling. Donnie took a step closer, leaning in, his voice low and tense. "You ate the cake in my fridge, didn't you?" Leo froze, his eyes wide, muttering a vague apology and offering an excuse to deflect suspicion. In truth, he didn't even know the cake existed. Moments later, the lights came back on, and Leo tried to think of a way to stall until his mother arrived. In his anxiety, he recalled Uncle Danny once mentioning a small cellar under the kitchen where he kept special items. He asked his uncle to retrieve an item for him, claiming he was afraid of the dark and confined spaces. Donnie paused, staring at Leo with a puzzled expression. "All right, Leo," he said, his voice slow, as though contemplating something. Then he uttered a chilling sentence. "One last time, I'll indulge you." Danny bent down, yanking the cellar door open. The hinges screeched loudly in the eerie silence as he squinted into the darkness below. The cellar was pitch black, and a musty odor wafted out, forcing Leo to step back to steady himself. As Danny was halfway into the cellar, Leo suddenly heard him let out a cold, menacing chuckle. Then he stopped, looked up at Leo and said, "You know, Leo, there's so much more to discover down here. Would you like to come in?" Leo shuddered, fear rising in his throat. But he managed to keep his composure and immediately declined. Donnie laughed loudly, then continued descending into the cellar. Once he was completely out of sight, Leo realized he had only one chance. But at that moment, Donnie suddenly looked up, his eyes gleaming like a predator spotting prey, shouting to ask what Leo was doing. Leo didn't answer, quickly stepping forward, grabbing the cellar door and slamming it shut with all his strength. Donnie roared from below, his screams a mix of rage and panic. He hurriedly slid the latch to lock the cellar door. From below, Donnie's pounding on the door echoed fiercely. When the police and his mother arrived, Donnie was pulled out of the cellar in a completely unhinged state. He screamed and repeated nonsensical words about the darkness. Leo's mother couldn't believe her eyes, as they had initially believed this man was Uncle Danny. But now, the truth was undeniable. He was a psychiatric patient. During one of Uncle Danny's volunteer shifts at the hospital, where the man was being treated, he had met Danny and felt a strange connection. He became increasingly obsessed with Uncle Danny's life. When Danny mentioned Leo's upcoming visit, he decided it would be fun to experience that life, taking Danny's place. His mother held him tightly after everything they had just learned. It was over, but the pain of the loss and the truth about his late uncle would haunt Leo in sleepless nights to come. The mysterious harmony from the ancient piano. Nee, a young woman in her early 20s, stepped into a small, dimly lit antique shop in a quiet neighborhood. The shop was cluttered with antiques, old books, worn furniture, dusty frames, and a few musical instruments scattered around. The air reeked of aged wood and forgotten memories. Nee walked past the counter where the shopkeeper stood. He stared at her with wide, unblinking eyes, as if he had been waiting. His face was gaunt, his skin pale. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was strange.
You found the piano. It's calling you. It will begin soon.
The word sent a chill down her spine, since she hadn't mentioned the piano. The atmosphere grew odd. She decided to look around briefly and leave quickly. Then, Nee's gaze landed on a piano, old and tucked away in the corner of the shop. Despite its age, its darkened wood seemed to exude a mysterious allure. She brushed her fingers lightly over the keys. The instrument's delicate beauty starkly contrasted its eerie presence, making it irresistible. She approached the counter to face the man again. This time, she noticed his hands were marked with faint, dark scars, as if burned or clawed repeatedly, the lines deep and jagged. She decided to take the piano and leave. The door chimed behind her, and she turned to see the shopkeeper standing at the window, staring at her unblinkingly as she walked away. From the moment she placed it in her room, strange things began to happen. Nee began to play the piano softly, trying to familiarize herself with its peculiar presence. The keys, though old, worked, but felt strange beneath her fingers. Suddenly, Nee stopped playing. The music lingered in the air for a moment before dissolving into faint whispers. She stood, heart racing, unsure of what had just happened. One night, after a restless sleep, she returned to the piano. Nee found a yellowed sheet of music tucked among the piano strings. Curious yet uneasy, she played it, only to discover the notes resonated in an inexplicable way. It felt as though the notes were alive, playing themselves before her fingers touched the keys. Unintentionally, Nee had begun to unlock the tragic history of the piano's previous owner. She continued to play, unable to understand why she couldn't stop. She heard a faint voice whispering in her ear, speaking an ancient language. The words seemed to echo in her mind, filling her thoughts. She stood up abruptly, thinking she was probably too tired, and decided to head to her room and sleep. Nee drifted into slumber after a tense day. She was no longer in her room, but found herself in a grand concert hall. The room was empty, except for a grand piano at its center, and dim light from antique chandeliers that looked decades old. As Nee approached the piano, she saw a tall, gaunt man seated at the keys. He wore an old black suit, but his sunken eyes and pale skin made him look like a wax statue. Nee called out,
"Who's there?"
The man slowly turned around. His gaze pierced through Nee, and his voice echoed like a distant whisper.
I've waited a long time.
Nee tried to step back, but it felt like her feet were pinned to the floor. The man glided closer, not moving his legs, as if floating on air. Then the man pointed toward an old table nearby. On it lay a dusty sheet of music titled Sonata of Eternity.
There's not much time left. Only this melody can save us, or drown us both.
Before Nee could respond, the space around her twisted into a black vortex, engulfing her. She woke up with a start, drenched in sweat, clutching a corner of her blanket. Everything around her was silent. The dream not only left a haunting impression, but also led Nee to crucial details in reality. Perhaps she had unwittingly opened a door, allowing the spirits and tragic memories of the composer to resurface. She could still recall the image of the man struggling amidst the shadows, his eyes filled with despair, as if begging her to uncover the truth. She stopped playing the piano. For days, she couldn't bring herself to touch the instrument. Night after night, Nye heard whispers growing louder and more persistent, making everything feel increasingly unbearable.
Help me. Free me from the curse.
These words seemed to come from the trapped soul of the composer, still bound to the piano through his music. Waking in despair, Nye approached the piano, slowly sitting down. She noticed a small, faint mirror appearing behind the instrument. Nye cautiously wiped the dust from the mirror. Beneath the grime, the figure of a man slowly emerged. The gaunt man, his deep, dark eyes locked onto hers. He said nothing, but his gaze was intense, almost pleading, as if trying to convey something. After staring into the mirror, Nye saw words gradually appear on the glass. The crooked writing seemed as though someone was etching it from the other side. You have only one chance. Then his bony, emaciated hand reached out from the mirror, grasping toward her, begging for salvation. Understand the final rhythm before you play.
Please, help me. Save me.
A weight pressed against her chest before everything returned to normal. Nye realized she had to complete the sonata. The only way to break the curse was to finish the music she had started. She was plunged into despair and fear as she realized the price of freeing him. If she didn't play the final sonata, the curse would claim her as well. As Nye studied the sheet music, every note seemed distorted, warning her. It revealed the words, When the piano begins to play, you must finish the music before the light in the mirror fades. If not, the door will close forever. Nye swallowed hard, feeling the weight pressing down on her shoulders. Time was running out. It could happen at any moment. In her darkest hour, Nye sat before the piano, determined to break the curse. The clock struck midnight. The room was ice cold, and the music filled the air like an oppressive weight. Nye's fingers trembled as she began to play the sonata, the final piece in the composer's symphony of sorrow. But as she neared the final notes, Nye realized the sheet music was incomplete. A note had been erased, forcing her to rely on her intuition to finish the piece. She couldn't stop now. Then the mirror behind the piano shattered. Startled, she paused for half a second but couldn't stop. The gaunt figure of the man seemed to crack with the mirror, his eyes filled with despair.
Save me. Be careful. If you fail, you will take my place.
He cried out, his voice laced with agony. Nye played the final note, placing all her faith in her intuition. In the last moment of the sonata, the piano emitted a piercing sound. A brilliant light burst from the mirror, and she felt the entire room being drawn into the vortex. The man's figure vanished, and the room suddenly fell silent. In the ensuing silence, the figure in the mirror was gone, leaving behind a whispered,
"Thank you."
The room felt lighter, as if both their burdens had been lifted. When the light faded, Nye found herself sitting in her quiet room, all the strings of her instrument broken, and the mirror shattered. Exhausted, Nye collapsed on the piano. Perhaps everything was truly over, and fortunately, she had completed it. But deep down, Nye didn't know if she would ever truly escape the haunting melodies that had once drowned her. The echo of the forgotten sonata. Silver Hollow was known for its quiet streets, friendly faces, and a sense of safety. But the highway just outside its borders told a different story. For months, drivers had vanished without a trace, and rumors of a masked figure haunting the lonely stretch of road began to spread. Locals whispered about this mysterious stalker, but no one had seen him close enough to describe. Nick Hollis, an investigator, was assigned to go undercover as a long-haul truck driver, to uncover the truth behind these mysterious disappearances. Nick was skeptical. A wholesome-looking town like Silver Hollow didn't seem like the hiding place of a serial killer. He didn't know if the road and the small town were connected, but highways didn't lie, and the rising number of disappearances demanded answers. Although he lived in the town, he had never noticed anything strange about it. Most people were genuinely kind. His cover was simple: a new truck driver passing through the area, taking odd routes to make a living. He disguised himself and rented a small apartment on the edge of town. During the day, Nick observed the locals, casually chatting at diners or gas stations. Everyone was polite, almost overly friendly, as if trying to erase any doubt. But unease settled in at night as the highway stretched endlessly into darkness, lit only by the occasional flicker of headlights. It was Nick's third night on the highway. Suddenly, a figure darted across the road, briefly illuminated by the truck's headlights. He slammed the brakes, the truck skidding slightly before coming to a halt. His mind raced. Who would be out here at this hour? He grabbed a flashlight and stepped out, scanning the roadside. As the flashlight swept across the ground, Nick spotted something wedged under a nearby rock, a crumpled piece of paper. He hesitated, then stepped forward and bent down to pick it up. The paper read, "Turn back. You won't find them alive." A chill ran down his spine. He swept the flashlight across the area again, but saw no one. Nick hurried back to his truck. He glanced at the rearview mirror again, but all he saw was the dark highway stretching behind him. The note felt like a warning, and Nick knew he couldn't ignore it. The following night, Nick parked his truck at a small rest stop along the highway to get a better vantage point. Around 2 a.m., he noticed a car with its lights off creeping along the road, as if trying to avoid detection. Nick started his truck and followed from a distance. The car turned onto a dense, overgrown path leading away from the highway. Nick parked nearby, grabbed his binoculars, and observed. A masked man stepped out of the car, dragging a heavy-looking bag. He disappeared into the trees. Nick's instincts kicked in, and he quietly followed on foot, keeping his distance. After a few minutes, he spotted the man crouched by a small fire, rummaging through the bag's contents, wallets, phones, and jewelry. Nick crept closer, careful not to make a sound. His plan was to observe long enough to identify the man and his habits, then report back. But as he moved, a twig snapped under his foot. The masked man said,
"Who's there?"
Nick raised his hands in surrender.
"Just a truck driver passing through. Got lost."
The masked man stood up, holding a knife.
"This road isn't for wandering. You should leave,"
he muttered before vanishing into the woods. Nick immediately called for backup, and a quick search of the area uncovered a stash of stolen goods. 2 days later, the masked man was caught and identified as a petty thief who had been robbing and extorting travelers. Nick's instincts told him this man wasn't responsible for the disappearances. The thief's petty crimes were nothing compared to the horrors the missing travelers had faced. After capturing the masked thief on the highway, Nick couldn't shake the unease in his mind. The petty thief's words echoed in his memory. The real monster isn't dumb enough to get caught. He started noticing inconsistencies. A house with windows perpetually shut. A place he often passed but never saw anyone. Upon investigation, he realized it was his cousin Derek's house, who lived on the town's outskirts. Derek had always been approachable, someone Nick trusted. But during a casual visit to Derek's house, Nick sensed something was off. Derek's home was cozy, adorned with old family photos, and faintly smelled of wood. While chatting over coffee, Nick's sharp detective instincts picked up on strange details. Scratches on the floor near a cabinet, an unusual lock on the basement door, and a faint metallic scent in the air. While Derek excused himself to take a call, Nick wandered through the living room, his curiosity growing. A framed photo on the mantel caught his attention. It was a picture of Derek standing with a group of locals, including a man reported missing months ago. That night, Nick pretended to leave but parked his truck nearby, watching. Using his lock-picking skills, Nick snuck around the back and gently opened the door. Nick opened the basement door and descended the stairs. The stench hit him first, a nauseating mix of damp earth and decay. The dim light from a single bulb revealed a chilling scene. Rows of Polaroids were pinned to the walls, some showing missing persons from case files, all in varying states of fear and distress. A bloodied tarp covered something large on the floor. Nearby were necklaces, wallets, and torn jackets scattered carelessly. The basement resembled something out of a nightmare. Rows of industrial freezers lined the walls, each labeled with dates and names. A workbench was filled with surgical tools, knives meticulously arranged. As Nick turned to leave, he heard footsteps above. Derek's voice rang out, calm but chilling.
You weren't supposed to see this, Nick.
Derek appeared at the top of the stairs, holding a shotgun, his face devoid of its usual warmth. He revealed his twisted reasoning, claiming he was protecting the town by ensuring no locals came to harm. Knowing he couldn't reach his concealed weapon, Nick noticed a toolbox on a nearby shelf. Inside, he spotted a flashlight with a cracked lens and a reflective object sticking out of the corner, an old mirror. He began forming a plan. Nick stepped back toward the toolbox, feigning nervous compliance.
At least let me clean up the mess I've made, Derek. Let me pull the tarp back.
As Nick knelt to adjust the tarp, he discreetly grabbed the mirror from the toolbox. Using the flashlight's cracked lens to create a distraction, he angled the mirror to reflect the light from the overhead bulb. Nick raised the flashlight, aiming it at Derek. The cracked lens split the beam, momentarily blinding and distracting him with a sudden burst of light. As Derek instinctively stepped back, Nick lunged toward a nearby shelf, knocking over a stack of paint cans. The heavy cans tumbled down, causing Derek to stagger and drop the shotgun. Nick slammed the basement door shut and locked it from the outside, using a nearby chair to block the handle. Wasting no time, he pulled out his phone and called for backup. Authorities arrested Derek and seized the horrifying evidence from the basement. Inside the freezers were packages labeled as meat, but peeling back the layers revealed severed hands and feet, meticulously wrapped and disturbingly labeled. Even as the case was closed, Nick couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness of Silver Hollow ran deeper than his cousin's monstrous deeds. Mystery buried under the snow. Rian had never truly clicked with Tyler, but they were still friends. Their relationship had always been complicated, marked by their differences in personality. Tyler was a complex, reserved guy with hidden corners of his life he never let anyone see. On the other hand, his mother, Diane, was the opposite, controlling, invasive, and suffocating. She seemed like a constant weight on his shoulders, though Tyler never outright said so. Their mother-son relationship might seem normal at first, but something about it never truly felt right. Diane constantly monitored Tyler with endless calls, texts, and surprise visits. He was never truly at ease during outings with friends, always explaining that he couldn't stay long because his mother would worry. When Tyler finally moved out, Rian thought things would change for him. Diane paid his rent, of course, so she couldn't entirely let go, but Tyler initially seemed more at ease. But that didn't last. He started avoiding people, skipping gatherings, and dodging calls. Rian thought Tyler was just adjusting to his new life, but one day, Rian ran into him. Tyler, looking exhausted, waved him over, and asked for help fixing a leaking faucet. When Ryan entered Tyler's apartment, everything seemed normal at first. However, there was an unsettling heaviness in the air.